Welcome to the Jameson Files. I'm Carrie Weber. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Welcome from ADA's SmileCon 2022 in Houston, Texas. We are a part of their podcast influencer area here at the meeting. And so we're so thrilled to be a part of ADA's meeting and to SmileCon 2022. I'm so excited to have a good friend as a guest with me in this episode, Josh Griebahn, who is the transition sales consultant for Henry Schein Dental Practice Transitions. And Josh, we've known each other for several years now in various roles that you've played through Henry Schein, through the organization, and it's so good to have you. Thank you for being willing to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
It's a pleasure.
I know, this is so great.
Yeah.
And it's especially great because of the topic we're going to talk about. Wow, it's such a hot topic. You know, a lot of our Jameson clients are starting to enter into the realm of considering, is it time to transition out of practicing. And of course, we also work with a great deal of younger dentists that are looking, associates looking for the next chapter in their careers. And so we're going to talk about practice transitions. What does this look like in today's dental environment? And, Josh, to begin, can you share a little bit about your role as a transition consultant for Henry Schein? What is your primary role? What do you feel like your role and your goals are in the work you do with your clients?
Great question. A little quick fact about Henry Schein is most people don't know is that we're actually the largest dental practice transition broker in the country. We perform over 1,000 practice evaluations every year, and we help anywhere between 300 to 500 doctors transition or exit their current practice situation throughout the country.
Wow.
So there's actually 60 to 65 of me in all parts of the country. We have an amazing team, people that have been established for 20 to 30 years. And so that really helps me and our team give guidance from exit strategy planning to evaluating a practice, giving guidance on how to improve.
Yes.
The options that they could have over the next, maybe it's a now thing, or maybe it's hey, I'm just maybe thinking about 4 to 5 years out.
Right.
What does that look like for me? Do I need to add an associate? Do I need to cut my days back? Do I need to add more days? Do I need to improve my office? What do those things look like? Do I need to find a new CPA? Just things like that. They've been through it. They know how to acquire. They know how to manage a team. Typically, HR is all set up. They have managers or chair-side owners that are extremely entrepreneur-minded, and they just want you to stay for a little bit, and then they'll come in.
They'll fill in
right
behind you.
A lot of that is culture based.
Right.
So they're a little bit more flexible. And then you've got the big guys, number 3, that's your corporate.
Yeah.
Your TSOs, dental service organizations, your DPOs, your dental partnership organizations, your private equity groups, whatever those look like. Those are great options. However, to some it might not be great options.
Right.
Every single category may or may not be a great option to somebody else. The corporate groups, they pay a lot of money. There's partnership opportunities. They're more reliable. They're more looking for EBITDA.
Yeah.
And location, number of operatories. Will you stay along and work for 3 to 5 years? Will you stay and work for 8 years?
Yeah. So you think in the larger the group, the more likelihood in the negotiations there would be, will you stay for not just weeks or months,
right,
but for years?
Correct, because there's a that's the time and money thing. So if
right,
you want more money, there's going to be more of a time work. They call it a work back or a contractual obligation in order to either receive the other amount of money or to participate in the equity event down the road.
Have you been experiencing in this role at this point, of those 3 groups, the solo dentist, is that pool shrinking?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, it's actually, there's quite a bit of solo buyers that are out there. The only difference between them and a corporate pool that I see right now is, does it make sense for them to leave their current employment?
Right.
And
do they have the financial
exactly,
capacity to take on full ownership?
Correct. And here's my analogy. $1 million practice is being sold or being bought. I'm the associate that's working for someone right now, and I want to buy your practice. I'm making $250,000 right now a year. in order for me to go out and borrow $1 million, with the interest rates where they are right now, it's going to cost me $120,000 a year, roughly $100,000 to $120,000 a year to cover that loan. So, and you are netting yourself $350,000. So automatically, before taxes, now I'm going to bake around $200 to $225, and I'm going to have to have all this responsibility. Is that worth it to me?
Yes.
So then you start to have these, and the ones that really want it, and they're sick and tired of, being W-2 people or independent contractors. Those are great. Yes, those types of buyers are out there. But then you're also looking at a supply and demand issue. I cover Iowa as well. And the market is completely different there than, say, in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio.
Interesting.
Which is my demographic.
Okay.
And it's different everywhere. So Austin, you can put a practice on the market that's $1 million, 5 operatories, and it's gone in a day.
Wow.
Versus if you're in a, say, I don't want to call it on Iowa because I'm an Iowa guy, but let's just say you're kind of in the middle of we call them the boonies, but you're kind of out there, small town. It's going to take a lot longer, and you're going to have your value isn't going to be as much.
Well, and that was a question that I kind of had in my head. If the person that's listening right now is a doctor that is on the side of their career where they're just starting to think about what is exiting, what does retirement look like, maybe I want to do this differently or do something new. I love that you were saying, the kind of the self-reflection or the vision planning for that and preparing proactively for that you talked about earlier on. But based on if you're in a more metropolitan area, if you're in a more rural area, do you have some time frames that you recommend? Maybe you don't, but just based upon how different those two geographical areas may be to find a buyer, when you think proactively, how long do they need, when do they need to start setting things in play to seek out the person to take over the practice?
Great question. I had a presentation the other night and had a great turnout, and everybody, in one of my slides, one of the questions I said, who should have a practice valuation? A proper valuation, not a broker opinion, but a proper valuation of assets and goodwill. The intangible assets versus the tangible assets. What does that look like on paper? And it used to say 45 to 75. And I changed it to 35 to 75. In the last 12 months, I've had more deaths doing valuations and selling those unexpected passings than ever. So
you do those valuations?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And
that's a great thing to know too, because we get asked that question as well. Like, where do we go to get a practice valuation?
Yeah. So Henry Schein is start to finish, from exit strategy planning, from a valuation to partnership, associate agreements, all the way to listing your practice, to finding you a buyer, all the way to closing.
And so what you're saying is, from that valuation standpoint, it's never too soon.
It's never too soon, but it can be too late.
And then let's say I have one done now. When would I need to have you revisit? Let's say I'm nowhere near ready to transition, but I do that for that kind of safety, kind of having all my ducks in a row. How regularly should a practice do that?
Typically some will say every 12 months, but we usually will recommend every 2 to 3 years, just to have it updated.
Right.
Fresh financials, you never know.
Things change.
Something changes, maybe your hours cut back, but to have that fresh valuation, have a letter of instruction, which we provide complimentary to people that just reach out to us, to say, hey, here's who the important people are, here's my attorney, here's my CPA. I unfortunately had a passing, and nobody could find the information, found the CPA, and they were actually best friends, and the CPA didn't even know. So those are the crazy stories, but my plea and my reach out to anybody, because we're not the only broker in the country. There's great companies that are out there that do a great job representing. But whoever you choose, sit down, have a valuation, look at your tax structure, because when you sell, minimizing your tax liability is a really important thing. Just because you sell for $1 million doesn't mean you're going to keep $1 million. Okay, and being an LLC or a sole proprietorship or even an S corp, if it doesn't match your goals in the end, there's so many tax advantage, structures that you can do. One thing I do speak on, and I'm not an expert on it, but I have partnerships that are. is how do you structure appropriately to minimize your liability? Those are things that you can have a conversation tomorrow with somebody and get that all set up. It has nothing to do with transitioning in terms of from the process, but from being prepared, protecting your family, protecting yourself. And I don't know a whole lot of people that like to overpay in taxes,
Right.
especially at the
either.
time of closing. Those are really important things that you can do now. So when we talk about exit strategy planning, make sure you have evaluation completed. Preferably use somebody like Henry Schein, who's got a great team that does it. We're rated extremely ethically in what we do. Of course, we're very recognizable, so we have a name stake to have. So if we don't perform, hey, our name's on the line.
Yeah.
So get evaluation done, have it appropriately done. Sit down and have those questions that I mentioned kind of thought out a little bit.
Okay.
Make sure that the scenarios are explained over the next, either if it's a now thing or a 5-year thing.
Yes.
Because let's just say you do want to sell to a corporate group. Well, you've got a certain time frame to work. And you don't want to be 67 and say, hey, I want to sell to a group now, because you don't want to be 72 having to work.
Right, you don't want to be locked
But those
in.
buyers also don't want to acquire you if you're at a certain age. Same thing can be held for a solo practitioner that's looking to buy. If you wait until the end, or you say, hey, I'm going to sell until my lease expires, I'm not going to wait until my lease expires. Now you're looking at, well, what does the lender need to see from a lease agreement? Now, there's all these little nuance, little things that can affect the outcome of your transition plan. Your idea in your mind, your white sheet of paper. This is what I want to do. I want to hang up my cleats to this time. I want to keep them working until now. So kind of going all the way back to what can you do today? Have evaluation, have an exit strategy planning session, meet with the tax advisor that knows how to structure a dental office. I'm assuming you as a consultant, you see this all the time.
Yes.
Why are you working with that CPA? Doesn't mean that they're a bad CPA, but maybe just not for dental. Make sure your financial advisor is meshing well with that, and have everything written out just in case something happens.
Yes.
So
What I love about everything that you've shared is it's also proactive and intentional. Instead of, we always talk a lot about being intentional, being proactive, don't be reactive. And what you see a lot in practice sales is, now I'm done. Right. And if you live in rural America, you may not be able to find a buyer. And practices to just shutter up after years and years of practicing just is sad.
Right.
And so it's never too soon to start putting a plan, be proactive, be intentional, be thoughtful. Your transition and exit strategy is just as much a part of your practicing vision as your vision for the time that you are in the practice, is
Correct.
what I'm hearing from you. So, Josh, where can people learn a little bit more about Henry Schein Practice Transitions if they wanted to reach out? How do they start? How does that process start with you?
If you go to Henry Schein if you go to dentalpracticetransitions.com,
Okay.
or if you just Google Henry Schein Dental Practice Transitions, you'll go to our main website. It's really easy. You can do it on your phone, you can do it through the website, and you can put in your information. It's all confidential. It goes to the person that's in your area.
Okay.
And they reach out to you typically in probably 24 to 48 hours. They reach out and they'll say, hey, let's schedule a 30-minute complimentary confidential call.
Yes.
And then in that, typically will lead to an in-person meeting. If not, I'll give my number. If you're in the Houston or
Right.
Texas area, you can call me. But that's the best spot to go.
Okay.
Selling a practice is a very emotional, personal thing that there's maybe 5% that say, I'm out, I don't care. But there is an emotional component to transitioning. It's been your craft. You're an artist. You're managing a business. You have people that count on you every single day, whether they're wonderful people that you have to manage or, maybe it's a little rough some days. There's still an emotional tie, because once you leave, you don't, they have a saying, and I played sports in college, and in the professional world, it's the same thing. When you leave, there's a small type of depression that happens when you leave and you retire. You're kind of like wondering what's going on. I mean, there's a quarterback that plays for the Tampa Bay right now who I think is going through that a couple times, right? So that's
Maybe.
So those are realistic things. So what are
Yeah.
you going to do after you sell? Are you going to go play golf? You're going to go on a trip with your spouse? Is that what you're going to do all the time? those are really, there's this emotional part that you have to consider, which is why I really asked those 3 important questions.
Yes.
That when you have that done, and I've had clients that say, man, I really wish I would have met you a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So you can start now.
Let's wrap with one more time those 3 questions. Let's leave that with the listeners and the watchers, because I think that is what that's where you start, because it's a part of your vision, and the more thoughtful you are about those things, the better decisions you can make in that journey of transition. So what were those 3 questions again?
Those three questions. 1, where are you today in your practice, both clinically and professionally? Where do you want to be in the next 2 to 5 years? So do I want to be a manager? Do I like managing? Do I want to be chairside? Do I not want to be chairside? What do I love and not love that I would not like to be doing in 2 to 5 years? And then number 3 is, what do you think are the potential challenges in a transition or you exiting your practice, either planned or unexpectedly?
Awesome. Such great questions for all of you to consider. The transition, the exit is an inevitable part of your professional career. And so it's never too soon to start having those conversations with the professionals and the resources that are available, people like Josh that are here to help you have the most successful and smooth transition and exit strategy that you can have. So Josh, thank you so much for being with us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and it's an honor.
Thank you. Yep. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching another episode of the Jameson Files. Be well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. See you next time.